They thought she was invisible. That's the part that still gets to me. They thought she was just another old woman taking up space and nobody important would ever ask where she went. 3 sentences into this story, and you already know how it ends because stories like this don't end quietly. Not when cruelty gets this loud, not when love shows up with teeth. It happened on one of those afternoons that look perfect on postcards. Sun out, sky clean, money in the air. Westbridge Promenade, that stretch of Harbor City where everything shines a little too much, where the coffee smells expensive and people walk like they're late to something important even when they're not. That place has rules, unwritten ones, about who belongs and who doesn't. And sitting right by the fountain on a cold metal bench that never quite warms up was Miss Lillian Carter. 73 years old, small, quiet, dressed like she'd just come from church even though it was a weekday. Faded blue dress, gray cardigan worn thin at the cuffs. Sensible shoes that told you she cared more about comfort than appearances. On her lap sat a beat-up canvas tote bag, the kind most people wouldn't give a second glance, and she held it like it mattered, because to her it did. Inside that bag was lunch, a peach cobbler she'd woken up before sunrise to bake wrapped in towels to keep it warm. It was for her son. She didn't know everything about what he did for a living. She never pressed him, you know what I mean, but she knew he'd been gone a long time, almost a year and a half, and that when he said, "Mama, wait by the fountain, I'll find you," he meant it. She checked her old analog watch, saw he was a little late and didn't mind at all. Waiting was something she'd gotten good at over the years. She hummed softly some gospel tune about sparrows and being watched over, completely out of place in a plaza full of designer shoes and sunglasses. That's when Officer Grant Heller noticed her. He was parked under an oak tree near the entrance with his partner Evan Price sipping bad coffee and killing time. Heller had been on the force 6 years, long enough to know how to walk like he owned the sidewalk. Price was newer still, figuring out how to fill out his uniform. Heller squinted toward the fountain, tapped the steering wheel and said, "You see that?" Price looked, shrugged, said, "She's just sitting." Heller laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "That's how it starts," he said. "One person who doesn't belong, then more. Promenade's supposed to stay clean." Price hesitated, said maybe she was waiting for someone. Heller took another sip of coffee and nodded at the tote bag. "Look at the bag. Bet it's full of something she shouldn't have." And just like that, he decided she was a problem that needed fixing. They walked over with that swagger that says, "I can do this and nobody will stop me." Heller's hand hovered near his holster, not because he needed it, but because he liked the reminder. Lillian didn't notice them until their shadows fell across her bench. She looked up, squinting into the sun, and smiled politely. "Good afternoon, officers." Heller didn't smile back. He stood over her thumbs, hooked into his vest, eyes scanning her like she was inventory. "You've been sitting here a while," he said. Lillian glanced at her watch. "Have I? I'm just waiting on my son." Heller repeated it like it was a joke. "Your son? Does he work around here or what, cleaning the hotel?" Something in Lillian's expression tightened. Not anger exactly, more like dignity being tested. "No, sir," she said evenly. "He's meeting me for lunch." Heller looked back at Price and smirked, then leaned in closer. "This area has a no loitering policy. Private property." Lillian answered calmly. "This bench is by the fountain. It's public." "Privately managed," Heller snapped, stepping closer, close enough to crowd her space. "Now what's in the bag?" She hugged the tote a little tighter. "It's food. Open it." She blinked. "Sir, I don't believe I have to." Heller's patience evaporated. "Open the bag." Heads started turning at nearby cafe tables, phones coming out. Lillian's voice trembled just a touch, not with fear but with hurt. "It's lunch. I made it for my son." Heller sneered. "We've had shoplifting reports. Bags like that are used to hide stolen items." "You fit the description." Lillian looked straight at him. "I fit the description of who?" He reached down and grabbed the strap. "Don't," she said, suddenly desperate. "Please don't. It's glass." He yanked anyway. The bag flew, hit the pavement, and the sound that followed was sharp and final, like something breaking that couldn't be put back together. Crack. Syrup and peaches seeped through the canvas and spread across the stone. Lillian gasped, hands flying to her mouth. "My dish." Heller looked down at the mess like it offended him. "Now you're making a mess of public property," he said loudly. "That's vandalism." Price shifted uncomfortable. Grant, it's just food. Shut up, Heller hissed. Lillian's eyes filled, not because people were watching, but because she'd spent hours on that cobbler. It was how she showed love. Heller didn't care. Stand up, he ordered. For what she asked. For sitting. For refusing a lawful order, he said, already pulling out his cuffs. Lillian stayed seated, gripping the bench. Young man, she said, and there was weight in her voice now. You're making a mistake. Heller laughed. Is that a threat? No, she said quietly. It's a promise. If you touch me, my son won't take it lightly. Heller's eyes lit up. Oh, so now you're threatening an officer. He grabbed her arm and hauled her up harder than necessary. She cried out, pain shooting through her shoulder. Stop resisting! He yelled for the cameras, though she wasn't. He pinned her against a metal pole cuffs, snapping tight around her wrists. Please, she gasped. My phone's in the bag. I need to call him. He's close. You'll get a call at the station, Heller said. If the phones work. They marched her to the patrol car. She looked back once at her ruined bag sitting in syrup like a small, quiet tragedy. Leave it, Heller said. Sanitation will get your trash. That word trash landed hard. The car pulled away, lights flashing like she was dangerous. And yeah, that happened. What Heller didn't know was that 3 minutes later, a matte black SUV rolled up to the fountain. No plates, dark windows, the kind of vehicle that doesn't belong anywhere public. A man stepped out, broad-shouldered, calm in a way that made the air feel heavier. Damian Carter. To most people, he didn't exist. On paper, he was a contractor. In reality, he commanded a federal unit that handled problems nobody ever tweeted about. He walked to the bench, saw the shattered glass, the syrup, the scuffed boot print through it. His jaw tightened. He turned to a teenager still holding a phone, shaking. Where is she? He asked, voice low. The police, the kid said. They took her. They were mocking her. Damian nodded, once touched his earpiece. Raven Actual, asset in custody, activate black protocol. At the 4th precinct, Heller strutted in like he'd done something right. He paraded Lillian through the bullpen, ignoring her limp. What do we got? The desk sergeant asked without looking up. Loitering, resisting threats, Heller said. Claims her son's some kind of federal operator. The sergeant glanced at Lillian, frowned. Book her, Heller snapped. Lillian rubbed her wrists. I want my phone call. Processing first. They tried scanning her fingerprints. The screen flashed, security clearance override. Heller smacked the monitor. Stupid system. Lillian closed her eyes, felt something shift like a storm rolling in. Officer, she said softly, you should really let me call him. Your imaginary son can't help you, Heller snapped. They shoved her into a holding cell with people she clearly didn't belong with. She sat, folded her hands, and started humming again because sometimes that's all you have left. Back in the bullpen, Heller typed his report. The moment he hit enter, the screen went black. Phones rang all at once, then stopped. Lights flickered and died, emergency red glow filling the room. Someone shouted. A rookie ran to the window and froze. Outside, armored vehicles blocked the street, a helicopter hovering low, spotlight blazing. The front doors clicked open. Smoke rolled in, green laser dots dancing across chests. A voice boomed, calm and absolute. Weapons down, hands visible. Nobody moved until a laser landed square between Heller's eyes. Officer Grant Heller, the voice said, move your hand and you will cease to exist. He dropped his belt. Operators flooded in fast and silent, zip-tying officers like they were the suspects. Then Damian walked through the smoke, no helmet, no insignia, just control. Who's in charge? He asked. The sergeant stammered. You booked an elderly woman 20 minutes ago, Damian said. Where is she? Holding cell B. Damian nodded. Clear the hallway. He stopped in front of Heller, who was sweating through his uniform. You must be Officer Heller, Damian said quietly. I was just doing my job, Heller stammered. Damian's eyes dropped to the faint orange smear on Heller's boot. Peach syrup. You kicked her bag, Damian said. It was an accident. Heller lied. You kicked a 73-year-old woman's lunch, Damian replied. And you mocked her. Heller whispered, I didn't know who she was. Damian's gaze hardened. That's the problem. He turned away. At the cell, an operator raised a hydraulic tool. We can get the keys. Open it, Damian said. The lock gave way like it was nothing. Inside, the other women pressed back. Lillian sat calmly. When she saw Damian, her shoulders finally dropped. Baby, she whispered. Damian knelt on the dirty floor, took her hands, looked at the red marks on her wrists. I'm sorry I was late, Mama. I'm all right, she said softly. They were just mean. He helped her up, draped his vest over her shoulders. We're leaving. They walked through the bullpen past silent officers. Damien stopped once more in front of Heller. You thought nobody would care, he said. You were wrong. He ordered the servers, pulled reports, opened, histories examined. The fallout was fast. The video from the promenade went viral. Millions heard that crack of glass, saw an old woman's hands shaking. And once people started looking, everything came out. That bench wasn't about loitering. It was a drop point. Money taped underneath, protected by officers who thought they owned the street. Lillian hadn't lowered property values. She'd interrupted a crime. 6 months later, Heller sat in federal court smaller than he'd ever been, suit hanging off him. His partner testified. The video played again. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. On the way out, Lillian didn't smile. She held her son's arm and walked steady. Now here's where people argue. Damien didn't just ruin one officer. He cleaned out the whole unit. Some call that justice. Some call it too much. Some say complaints should have handled it. But you and I both know how complaints usually end. So here's my question to you. If you'd been there, if you'd seen an elderly woman treated like she was nothing, would you want slow justice or real justice? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And tell me this too, have you ever seen someone judged just for being out of place, and did anyone step in? Hit like if you believe dignity shouldn't depend on status, subscribe if you want more stories like this, and share it with someone who's ever been under